Today on The Chef's Cut, Joe and I are talking to a chef who's helping redefine what Mexican cuisine in America looks like on the plate, in the community, and on national television. We're joined by Chef Diana Davila, and we're talking about competing on Padma's new show.
They had to stop a couple of times. I'm like, because my eye was twitching.
Right.
Innovating in Mexican cuisine while still honoring tradition.
Because are preservers of the arts. And so that's the way I look at cooking.
And confronting sexism in the kitchen.
I had to literally kick him out. He wouldn't leave.
But first, Chef's Cut Nation, we need 10 seconds of your time. Please take a moment to rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast. It really helps. So, Diana, we had Gail Simmons on the show, and Joe and I had an episode not that long before Gail came on where we talked about cooking competition shows. So, I have a couple of questions. Actually, I have lots of questions because you recently you did America's Culinary Cup, which is Padma's show. And I have so many questions because we don't have as much of a scoop on that show because it's the first season. We don't know as many people who've been on it. We've talked about the show, but you're the first person who's been on the show that we're talking with. So I want to start from the beginning, though. Have you done cooking competition shows before, or was that your first?
I did Iron Chef Mexico. One, I always was no, I'm never going to do TV or cooking competitions. I feel like I was part of being young and snooty, being cooking's not a competition, it's an art. And then and then with Iron Chef Mexico, I was good enough, my CDC, that was just what? You heard this is the second or third time that they called me and they're oh, you have to do it. He's you have to do it. You have to do it. We have to do it. I'm all right, yes, let's do it. And I lost, which I thought that I totally should have won. And I'm so I had something in me that I have to do this again. There does light a fire under your ass to be get in there and do it again.
I mean, it's such a crazy thing. Cooking on a TV show is so different from cooking in a restaurant. You have a controlled environment at your restaurant.
Yeah.
Cooking competition is different. So what was it like on America's Culinary Cup? Because Joe and I know what it was like on Top Chef. And you may have seen an episode or two of Top Chef in the 23 seasons that they have.
I just saw your guys' season.
Oh, and I should have won.
Oh, yeah, you were texting me. You were
I'm I just saw it. Yeah.
And you were yeah, she totally should have won, Joe.
I'm going to start wearing Team Adrienne shirts. Just to fuck with Joe.
I love it. So what surprised you the most about when you actually got there?
Honestly, probably, I feel you have a relatively good idea of what it's going to be just from production, small production things, but it really is where you really don't have time and you don't know, they really do keep you in the dark for as long as it's feasibly possible. Just okay, we're ready. 5 more minutes. 5 minutes turns into 2 hours, and you're just it's just the anxiety, I think, of wanting to be constantly prepared for what you have no idea.
Well, and it was funny, I went and I watched the second episode with you. I came up to meet Tokayo when you had the big party for it with you and Beverly. You were there. Beverly Kim, who's also on the show, was there.
Yes.
And then Sarah Grunberg was there, who wasn't on that show, but was on Top Chef. And Age, you could feel the anxiety in the room of Beverly, of Diana, of Sarah, of myself. I looked around at one point at all four of us, and all four of us are watching it
yeah.
You know what I mean? We're watching a cook on a station do something that we could not be more stressed out about.
It's so stressful. So stressful.
You know what I mean? We were all oh, we're having a really fun time, but couldn't have been more
I'm sure,
my eyes started twitching during
your veins
judgments. During judgment, they're Diana, are you okay? They had to stop a couple of times. I'm because my eye was twitching.
Right.
I'm no, I'm just really nervous.
I was just watching it and I'm I'm not on the show. I have nothing to do with this show. And I would hear myself watching something happen and be
yeah.
And I'm what am I worried about? I'm not getting sent home no matter what.
Right. That's so crazy. I just remember being so nervous. And I think you nailed it. Like that anxiety, that feeling. You're like, I want to be ready, but I don't know what to be ready for.
Yeah.
And even when you do find out what the challenge is, I'm still like, like Gail Simmons said, like there's some chefs are tinkerers. I'm a tinkerer. I like to play around and I like to
Me too.
take my time with stuff. So for me, cooking
Me too, girl.
competition,
You do not have that. Yeah.
not my jam. It was not my, like, I come up with a dish, but then I'm like, but what if I did this? But what if I did this? And so
Exactly.
I spent so much time spinning out. It took me so
It also doesn't
long
help
to corral.
too, as like Buddha was warming up to us, because at first I feel like he was traumatized from like past experiences, and he thought that like he wouldn't like talk to anybody, and he'd just be like, and then finally he started like warming up, but then I wish I was like, could you just shut up? Like you're getting inside of our heads now, because he's just like, yeah, this is just like this and this, and like you just have, and like he knows what's going on, like, and for a lot of us that were like complete newbies, like we do not have that, and we're just like, oh, look at Buddha knowing exactly, being cool as a cucumber, and just be like, yeah, this is just the name of the game, guys. Come on. Like,
Oh,
oh God. It's like, all right.
yeah.
But I think it's also like, for you going on, and, I know you and I spoke a little bit before you went, and it's like, I mean, you're such an accomplished chef, right? You have one of the best restaurants in the city. You're Food and Wine Best New Chef. You James Beard nominate. Like you've done, from a chef perspective, I think, as far as like, accolades, recognition, and just like the reputation of who you are in Chicago, and what your restaurant is in Chicago is massive. Like, you know what I mean? That's
the scariest part going in.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Though. It's like, it's not like you're some upstart nobody heard of, right? You're not somebody else's CDC. You're, you know what I mean? You're a juggernaut of the city. You know what I mean? You're somebody that people look to. You're somebody who,
and that's really like, I remember
knows.
calling you about that. For me, especially, like, I feel like, I don't know if this is like part of like the woman experience of being like a chef, but like you work so incredibly hard to like build this reputation and to, be taken seriously. And I feel like many times, probably all chefs kind of feel like they have a chip on their shoulder of some sort, right? And it's the hardest thing to be like, go in somewhere and like to give up that control and to give somebody like the control of your narrative, or like how you're going to be portrayed, or like editing. And like, I still remember your advice, Joe, being like, just go in there like if you're like in the back of a police car, like just give them enough. Just give them enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
I always say it's an interrogation. It's not therapy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't,
like they're not your friends.
They're not.
That's all I said. What you say will be used against you.
Yeah.
Like,
and I almost regret how guarded I was. That is actually one of the things. I think that the only thing that I regret, and that's just because it's like the only thing that I could have controlled more, was actually being less guarded, because I feel like I was so afraid of saying something wrong, or like anything, like not where like I didn't fully feel like I like was able to kind of share myself, and I feel like it would have made it be a little bit more fun for me. But I think I didn't know that at the time, like you never know what like the show's going to end up being, like, and I feel like one of the things that I really loved about watching the show is actually seeing it really is about the cooking, and they really do want the best representations of like the chefs, and they're not there to like have any like sort of fights or dramas kind of a thing like that. It really does revolve around the challenges in the cooking, and I think that also like we're all on a WhatsApp like chat together, like the women all talk like pretty much every day, which has been really, really great. Yeah.
I was so happy you went and did it. I was like, so just, you know what I mean? Like, as your friend and as, a massive fan of your cooking and your career, because I know how scary it is. I know like people don't understand the level of vulnerability that it opens you up to put yourself out there like that. And that's like when we talked about it on the phone, I remember I was sitting in the pasta lab at Carciofo, and I was like, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And it's like, and I could feel all the fear, all the anxiety, like coming back to me of like when I made that choice of like showing up in Denver, showing up in that house for the first time, and knowing you were feeling the same way. And I was just like, man, like it's a dream to go on these shows, right? Like we all know that it's not part of our plan of like why we started cooking, but it's also like, it's fucking scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, that you went and you did it. And it's like, like I said, like you have a career built. You didn't need this to cement who you are, but that you were, you know what I mean? Like had the courage
You have to
enough to
seize the
say,
opportunity too,
yeah.
like that's kind of like the thing that I was like feeling. I'm like, like what kind of like, how prissy and how privileged to be like, no, do I want to do this TV show or not? Like it's like you have to seize these opportunities as they come, and it's always, yeah, putting yourself through kind of that test. Because even though our days are always different, I think as chefs, like I think it's always, you could also get kind of caught up in like doing the same every day, right? Like it's like, so like this is really something where like you don't get like these kinds of opportunities every day. And so like that I like kept saying to myself as well. It's
so cool that you did it. I thought you had such a great showing. I thought you did
Yeah.
awesome. I thought you represented
thanks,
yourself, the
guys.
city, all of it so well.
And it's so
So I
cool
was
because
just
so many
fucking amped
people,
for you, dude.
we know you in Chicago and chefs know you because we know of all these amazing restaurants and we read about all these chefs. But a lot of people across the country were being introduced to you for the first time. They got to know you because of the show. So that's such a cool thing too, to, expose yourself a little bit more and in such a great way. So for people who were discovering you through television for the first time, seeing you on America's Culinary Cup, how do you describe what you do at your restaurant? And was that what you were trying to portray? Were you doing similar food to what you'd cook in
Yeah.
Chicago?
Yeah. I feel like I always get kind of in my head, like the biggest thing that like I think that I'm always going to do from like this moment that I had where like I feel like I had these two magical moments in my life of like when I wanted to become a chef and then when it came to me that I wanted to dedicate my life to Mexican food, And so from that moment, anything, it almost reminds me of that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, like keeping it here in Chicago. Of like when the guy is just like, oh, show me a word and then I'll tell you how it's Greek, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
to me, it's like I do that with food, like I like anything that I taste or I like, I'm like, oh, how can I Mexicanize this? How can I bring this full circle and like make this? So I always look at everything that I do is always is like that now. So to me, I really wanted to showcase that. I feel like people love Mexican food, but lots of people, I mean, many people don't know anything about it. The majority of people, I mean, it's such a beautiful cuisine that's so complex and nuanced and so much history. And, and I'm like here for it. I mean, that's what my dedication is. And so, like, I really wanted to showcase that. And the other thing about it was probably my favorite, one of my favorite things about like coming off the show and having the show actually share is that the amount of sort of messages that I've gotten from other fellow Mexicanos and Mexicanas, like being like, oh man, like it was so great to see our food being represented and like that to me like really really it's like oh like because you don't think about it like you never think about that anything is bigger than yourself, right? Like it's just like this is happening to me like
Right.
like, and so like when you have messages like that it's really humbling, but then it also makes you know that you're a part of a way bigger picture, like and that was really really special for me.
What do you think it is that like separates Chicago Mexican food from like the LA or the Texas style? Like what do you think like the difference is when you think about it? Because I think they are not just in like the regions they represent, but I think
Yes.
stylistically as like, the Mexican Americans in those different communities do it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know. I feel like I definitely see the difference between like makes sense to me in my head about like the difference in like Texas Mexican food versus Chicago Mexican food, right? Because I feel like Texas being has such a unique history within itself, like so like the whole Tex-Mex history is so different and like how really the border crossed them and like how like what's being grown there in Texas, like how that so like it has such a different flavor profile that's makes it a very unique place to have Mexican food. And then also, since it's so close to northern Mexico, like also northern Mexico is like the northern states are so wildly different compared to, I mean, it's just like United States, right? Like Mexico is a very huge country, and it's like depending on where you are, people do things very, very differently. The north and the south are and central, like the food is wildly different. And I think that's the same thing that happens with California as well. I think that Chicago is special because we have so many people. It's a really diverse mix of groups from Central, South, and North Mexico coming here. So I think that's what kind of makes it here a little bit different. And I feel like more diverse into like what we have here. Like, yes, we have lots of people from Puebla. We have lots of people from Guerrero. We have lots of people from Durango. We have lots of people. So like that right there is like north, south, like so versus I feel like there's different concentrations maybe perhaps of like the north and different parts of each state or the south. I know that in New York, I feel like New York has always been notorious for like not having like being like such a melting pot of a huge city, not having like a very strong Mexican scene, like,
Yeah.
but I haven't been there in a long time now. So like, I could probably shut up and not know what I'm
Well,
talking about anymore. But I mean, I
as
feel like
somebody
we've
who
always
lives
been
here, I can
notorious
tell
for
you that
that.
you're pretty right. The only
Yeah.
part of the city that I've been to where there is a Mexican community and you can get nopales, you can get some of these things, you can get, non like stereotype of
Yeah.
just one region of food. Like soul food, you have the greatest hits. You have fried chicken and collard greens, but there's regional differences that a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know about. In New York, you can only get that like East Harlem. And then there's one little strip, Midtown West, on like 8th or Ninth Avenue, where there were these little grocery stores that would have like a taqueria in the back.
Yeah.
And there were only like 4 or 5 of them left because some of them got priced out. But Chef Repair would take the sous chefs there sometimes. Mexican cuisine is not hugely represented with that diversity in New York
Yeah.
like it is in Chicago. But for the food that you do, how do you kind of balance honoring the tradition of the foods and the ingredients that you're using versus pushing that forward?
I really do nerd out about researching when I find something that I like. Like, I really, really go down the rabbit hole every single time and like dissect everything about it, of like whether it is like something like, I don't know, like say cochinita pibil, right? Like it's a dish that I feel like we see plenty of times around like celebrations and stuff. It's like, well, why do we use those ingredients? Where is a natto from? Like why, like, so like you really start dissecting the recipe, finding out where these ingredients came from. Some are native, some are not. Finding out like, I remember the first time you finding out that like, oh, like really limes are not from Mexico, like things like that. I've always loved history a lot. So I feel like that like in myself like starts creating like a movie in my head. And then like I seriously dream about it. Then I start thinking about like, oh, what would it be like being there at that time and cooking it? And then for me it's having a foundation of understanding what something is before you can make it into your own, so like I don't just do like, oh, traditional recipes, right? It's finding out what that foundation is, then I turn it into me,
You
like
got to learn the
because I
rules
want to
before you break
contribute,
them.
like I want to contribute to Mexican cuisine, so to Mexican food. So like, and then I find like, how can I make this into something that is relevant now, whether it is like in the Midwest, you're always going to think about what is growing here, right? Like so like, how can I make this like Mexicanized, and then,
Yeah.
and that is like doing it Midwestern
And
as
that's
well,
how
right? Because that's
cuisine
what grows here.
develops. Yeah, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's how
It
food
depends. It's just
develops
a
and
movement to
grows.
people, like a big,
Exactly.
right.
Do you think that Mexican food in America is still misunderstood overall?
Yes, for sure, by and large, because there's a lot of things about understanding Mexican food, and I think that it is it's understanding also indigenous cuisine, So understanding Mexican food, you have to have an understanding of what indigenous cuisine is, and like that is some of my favorite studies. I'm always obsessed with indigenous culture because of like the cultivation, like of like really living in harmony with nature, and like just and the complex eating that they were doing in such an early, like thousands of years ago, like I have beans coming from the Tehuacan Valley, which is the first region that ever cultivated beans in the history of beans, like thousands and thousands of years ago. Like that to me is just like, like, and so if you go to Mexico, you're going to see the representation in indigenous everywhere that you go, and so like I think that that's one of my favorite things that something that Mexico really did differently than what, here in the States that we did. Like how many times you go around and you see like indigenous cuisine or indigenous culture around where here in the United States. Like you don't go outside and you're like, oh, okay, represented in what the people look like, what we eat, what we do. Do you know what I mean? And so like in Mexico, you see that like automatically, I mean, Mexico still speaks like 30% of Mexico still speaks their native language. And, like, so it's just one of the things that like I really, really love. It's this conservation of that and understanding a little bit more like not only the food, the culture, but like how can you stay in touch with those roots?
So one thing I wanted to ask about, talking about rabbit holes, like one of the things you keep talking about is something that I feel like I talk with like my younger chefs about all the time is when they talk about creating, right? Like every young chef coming up, they want to know the creative process. They want to know how they create. And what I always tell them is something that you've been talking about now pretty much like throughout this is that like research.
Yeah.
Like read and research. I'm like, I read a ton, I research a ton. So I'm just curious, like when you're talking about reading and researching, like what does your process look like a little bit?
My process is always like, I feel like this is going to sound like little hippie, but like, it really is like, you could always tell, like, I feel maybe it's because I'm always barefoot. Like you're always going to be able to tell, like, when you have to change things, right? Like, when it's like, right. You can't just be like, oh yeah, what would this and this taste like? You know what I mean? It's like just putting puzzle pieces together without really knowing if like,
you have to be an
like I don't
active
do that.
participant.
Like I definitely do way more like how you said, like before it was going to the library, like I would go to the books or going to like a bookstore and then just spending the day in the bookstore and just like not, you're not going to buy all those books. You just
just
go there and like
pretending
get
like
what
you're
you
gonna
need.
buy something.
Right.
Oh,
You're like, woohoo, free information.
it turns out I'm still a broke line cook. Never mind, I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks, guys.
But like researching, like remember we had to like research like what did these, like we had books with like terminology and vocabulary, like now things are so much easier. And so like you have all of this information at the finger, like so easy. Like and then like now with videos as well. So like yeah, I always tell people that like, well, you've gotta read. Like
What I
gotta
find
read.
interesting is all these videos, like some great cooking videos and some really good inspiration. There's some beautiful things happening online that I see people cooking, or some things are just interesting and you're like, I don't know if that's going to work and maybe this does. But
Yeah.
if you don't know the ingredients, or like you have to know the ingredients, like you have to get to know them. Like if the first time I had epazote in something, I was like, I need to know more about this ingredient. So I'm steeping teas. I'm trying to try it in different forms. And then I found out that my great aunt in Mississippi does an epazote tea that she would drink once or twice a month.
For your stomach.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's things like that the more you dig in, the more you find out. And then when you start to see new techniques or new dishes, you know that ingredient so well on such a deep level that you know when you can swap it in and how it can be used and the different iterations it can take.
That's why many times I've said that, like, like my cooking, I feel like it is a sense of like witchcraft, like because when, just like how many times have we seen like that cartoon of like, oh, which is going through like their cupboard, right? And they have all these ingredients, right? But they're making something and they're adding it to the pot, but it's all for a purpose.
Right.
Right? Like they're making something for something. That's why I say like it's not a gimmick saying that like, oh, I view myself like a bruja, like, and this is my witchcraft, like because again in Mexico that like they're preservers of the arts. Brujas are preservers of the arts. And so that's the way I look at cooking, is knowing all these ingredients and knowing what they do and then putting them together and like working together for something. Like not, because I want to make a plate look like this or because I want to, that seems shallow to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know another big part of what you do is community work. You were talking about Mexican cuisine and tradition versus pushing it forward. You said you want to contribute to the cuisine. You want to give something back to it. You want to help it grow and develop. And with your community work, it's kind of the same thing. You said you want to contribute to it. You want to give back to it. So you may not see it as a responsibility, but it seems like you took it on as a responsibility. So
when's the cookbook coming out?
Right.
Oh, that's probably the next phone call. I'm gonna like start bugging everybody on like, so you did a cookbook. What was that like? Yeah. I think my biggest thing, like I know that I know I want to do cookbooks. I feel like it's a responsibility to know. It's the same thing. It's like, what is this cookbook going to be about? Like I don't want it to be just a collection of recipes, but I want it to be like a full body of work. It's like same thing like I'm sure like when you're making a menu or like as a musician doing like an album, like you want it to be a cohesive body of work, right? Like what is this going to say? And, like I still haven't like that still hasn't like come to me yet. Like what do I want it to be? So I don't know. Hopefully, I keep thinking I'm like, oh, it's just gonna come to me, but like maybe I should do some work on it.
I mean, I feel like it's there.
I have an idea. I'll explain it. I'll explain it to you next time I see you. I feel like chefs, we always have other ideas for other chefs. We're like, oh, this
yeah, like you know what you should do.
But then when we think about it ourselves, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'd write in a book.
Diana, before we get to one of my favorite segments of the day that we call Walking Confession, because this whole thing has been kind of like one big line check because we had so much that we wanted to talk to you about, from America's Culinary Cup to your restaurants in Chicago to everything that you do in the community. But I have a little bit of a quick fire. We like to call this turn and burn. And then we'll get on to your walking confession where you can
little teasy
spill
and
some
beezy
tea.
today.
Yes, I know. I'm springing this on Joe too. Okay. So this is kind of a quick fire, this or that kind of thing. Whatever comes to your mind first, okay?
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Tacos or tostadas?
Tacos for sure.
Cooking one dish for 10,000 people or cooking multi-course for 10 people?
Multi-course for 10 people.
Yeah, that's an easy.
No brainer.
I should have said 1,000.
That number
not
was
10.
so aggressive. That's not a reasonable comparison.
I get excited.
I get excited. People, baby?
I meant to say 1,000 and I said 10,000. I got excited. That's all.
Right.
But okay. So competition cooking television or restaurant service?
Restaurant service. I'm in
What?
such a sucker. I mean, it's like everything to me.
All over again. Like,
hey, some people like that shit. Some people like it.
Know.
What is one ingredient? This is the last question. What is one ingredient that you will never get tired of?
Onions. I mean, I always feel bad saying that onions like what my favorite ingredient is. And I feel like it's because I want to say all chiles, because like I love it. And that's always the thing that whenever I travel and I'm somewhere outside, like, the country and that they don't eat, like I'm all, like, because eating here, like, well, I get to eat the food that I want, right? But like, I always miss like, yeah, this is really good, but it needs chile. Like, I feel like I eat spicy and I like to, so, but when I take a look at my recipes, it's like, dude, onions are fucking everywhere. Like, I love onions. Yeah.
I feel like
it would be hard without it.
Like onions griddling too might be like the top 5 like smell on earth for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like that smell of like a crisp day and you like smell the onions coming off a flat top and you're just like,
yeah.
Like it smells like Chicago. It smells like home.
Yeah,
it smells like comfort.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's kind of like because onions, Chicago onions, like that's what Chicago means. Like so there you go. Yeah.
I actually have a Chicago cookbook somewhere called
people.
We are 100%. All right, Diana. Now it is time to go to the walk-in and for you to spill some tea about a confession from something in your career earlier on. You ready?
Yes.
What you got?
Oh, I have watched the show before. And so this one, like, I was thinking about because, like, I wanted to, like, at first I'm like, man, has anything funny ever happened to me? Like, then I'm like, and for some reason I couldn't get out of my head about walking, right? Like, and I feel like the only thing that really I have, like, and it really did shape me because it was the first time that I ever was like confronted with something that, like, here and there that you could experience, like, um talking about sexism and like you could experience here and there verbally, like very like maybe small and like, but to be confronted with something like just straightforward. And it happened to me when it was my time in DC and it was my first sous chef position. And I was like super, it's funny when you think about like how young and naive we are. Like I'm like, oh yay, they're gonna love me. Like I thought that they were gonna love me. Like this kitchen was like almost all Central American, and I'm like, to me, like, doesn't matter, like we're like, I still think of us all as one people, and I'm just like, they're gonna love it because like I'm a like they're gonna be like, yes, finally a woman Latina to be like here with us, and like, like we're gonna relate on so many levels, and it's like that was not the way they felt at all. And there's always like a ringleader, right? And there's this like guy who was like sort of the ringleader of the group. And at first I kind of started noticing that like things that I would say, the directions, because at first, you go in and you kind of want to assimilate into the group, right? But then like it's like, okay, now I know how everything gets done. Now you start like doing directions, and then you could start changing things to make things better, right? And so when I started getting to that point and starting actually giving directions, and I started noticing that like for some reason whenever this guy was around, nobody would listen, and I told him something very specific to do and he just wasn't doing it. I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, are you in the weeds? Like, is something happening? Like, and he's just like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And I'm just like, and I've never had somebody like just tell me no before like that, and I'm just like, why? And he just like, and this is in Spanish and it sounds 10 times worse in Spanish what he said to me, but he was like, that because I was a woman and that women nada más sirven para hacer una cosa, that we're only good for one thing. And you could imagine what that is for, right? And like, and he's just like looking straight to me in the eyes and just like telling me this. And like, I like went into like complete shock. Like I've never had somebody like just like that tell you that, like, and like, and look at me, like, and then he just like looked up and down me, like just completely just treated me, right? Like, and I'm just like, and I like almost, I don't even know how I walked away. I don't think I turned around. I almost feel like I like floated into the fucking walk-in, right? Like, and like, and was just started crying. Right? Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I just totally did not understand because I feel like I was just like so bushy-tailed and so like, oh yeah, like, everyone's gonna love me and like not like, and then like this happens and like, yeah, like a little girl, I call my mom. Don't ask me how, but I got reception in there. And it's like, I like call my mom and I'm like, y luego me dijo, I'm just like sobbing and telling her about what happened. And of course, feel like, I don't know if all moms are like this, but to me, I like, it's like the immigrant experience where she's like, I mean, she listened to me, which was great, but then she kind of like gave me some couple cachetadas through the phone and be like, Diana, like, and she's like, all right, Diana. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm like, I thought that they were going to be like, no, 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 and she just kind of told me what I had to hear. And, you just got to do like, who's in charge here? Are you asking them to do something like build your company? Like, no. And then like go back out there and tell them how it has to be, and like,
and if he doesn't like
and
it,
I
you know
did.
what?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of my kitchen.
Well, pretty much I said that, but like in a what did I say? I said something along the lines like I went out there, like I like totally just like collected myself, right? And like went out there and I just really just told him like, well, if that's the way you feel, then, you know, you're going to have a hard time working for one. Why don't you go home?
Yeah.
You know, so like, and he's just like, I had to like literally kick him out. Like he wouldn't leave. I'm like, no, you have to go. I'm sending you home, you know? And like this guy like came like I ended up firing him and he would end up for like maybe 2 weeks, like showing up, trying to like muscle me, like trying to scare me, like, because you have to walk out the back door to like leave, right? Like he would show up with like his cars and like just like try to like scare me, you know? Like I remember the first couple of days, like I called my man and was like, you got to pick me up.
Pichugis!
Pichugis, I need you know, like there is a lot of like, yeah, a lot of that. So like, it didn't really end there, but that also like, once he was gone, like everybody else, like really, you know, those guys still send me messages to this day, you know, like, so, yeah, sometimes you got to go through that shit.
Sometimes you gotta cut the head off that snake.
Right.
You know what I
There's
mean?
always
It's like
one person.
it's like you gotta like make that one example of like, all right, fuck this motherfucker. Like they're not bigger than me, they're not better than me, and it's just. Also, I think cachetadas through the phone might be my favorite saying I have ever heard in Spanish. Like that is like that is the greatest like one line. Like print that shit on a shirt. You know what I mean? Like that should be the Mito Kaya tagline, dude. Right. Cachetadas through the phone, baby. Like, I love that. That's like the greatest thing I've ever heard.
My mom's gonna be like, okay, 30%, Diana.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
She deserves it. But in kitchens, man, there's always just one person who changes the culture and can make it unnecessarily hard for anybody becoming a sous chef. If you're a guy and it's your first time as sous chef, they will eat you alive. If you're a woman, that's the angle they're going to use. If you're a minority, that's the angle they could use. It's like they're just going to find something. You're too blonde, blondie. Like, you know, there's always something, and these people will eat you alive if you
you're
don't
too short, too tall,
get
too
them
fat,
out of there.
Too whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like they will. It's crazy. It's like it takes every single person to make a kitchen culture right.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like I know
it takes one to ruin it, though.
Like your kitchen is so great. I know people over there. You know, your CDC Derek's a longtime friend of mine and a fellow Southsider. But like your culture's so good, and like you guys fight for it so hard over there, and so do I with mine. But you know, it's just one shitty motherfucker. Mm-hmm. It's like a goddamn turd in the punch bowl, and you just like you got to root it out right away. Yep. It's like man.
Yeah. Well, good
Diana,
for you for getting him out of there.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy as shit. Awesome job on Culinary Cup.
Thanks.
Love seeing you on TV.
Congratulations.
I hope
Thank you.
So much more of it. You're the best. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Diana.
That's it for this episode of The Chef's Cut. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, especially if you're watching us on YouTube, where you can find full-length videos of every episode. And follow us on IG at The Chef's Cut Pod. For Joe Flamm, I'm Adrienne Cheatham, and this has been The Chef's Cut, Life Beyond the Pass.